Someone wanted me to speak about the difficulties in relationships when going through this awakening process. And this is a quite common question. Actually, I get a lot of questions about relationships and awakening. And one of the things that I want to give you a different perspective about is to see that the relationship is a catalyst for awakening. It's a catalyst for transformation. Now, when we're in these relationships, we often feel that things are getting rocky. There's a lot of friction. There's a lot of struggle, stress. And to hear that it's actually for your greater good and it's helping you come to realization is almost unbelievable. Because for many, these relationships, whether they are romantic relationships or relationships with your parents or your kids, siblings, to hear that these relationships are really a blessing, that it's a catalyst, is sort of unbelievable. Because many people actually run from their relationship because it gets so difficult. But there's no growth, there's no transformation without challenges and difficulties. It's life's difficulties, life's challenges that make us grow and transform us and ultimately bring one to the realization. And even after the realization, it's not the end. So the relationship, and more specifically running from the relationship, is a very common spiritual bypass. That we're running from the difficulty of the relationship. I want to avoid the relationship. I want to escape the relationship. It's too challenging. But if we see it as the relationship is a mirror, and this awakening process is like slowly opening your eyes to see what's always been here. It's as if you open your eyes and you're looking at the mirror. And the scariest thing is to face yourself. So seeing your own reflection may be painful. But it's a catalyst because as this awakening process continues, you start becoming aware of all of this old conditioning, a lot of the conditioning patterns, the psychological wounding, all of the unconscious reactivity is now being seen. And you can see far more reactive patterns and wounding in your relationship than you can outside of your relationship, sort of say. Because this relationship, there's so much reactivity. It's this constant like poking each other and seeing what gets activated. Press this button, let's see what happens. She presses your buttons, let's see what happens. And in this reactivity, everything is being seen. well, let's say not everything, but you're seeing more and more as the awakening process continues. And in seeing those conditioning patterns, you're becoming aware of it. So you're no longer identifying with the with the unconscious conditioning patterns. It's all coming up. But as it's all coming up, that's what's making it even more challenging. That's what's painful to see. A lot of these suppressed emotions and repressed emotions actually start coming up. And it's in these relationships where there's so much reactivity, where your partner's triggering you, pushing your buttons, that all of this is coming up much faster than it would be if you were not in a relationship, just by yourself in a cave or in some cabin in the woods. No, you're not going to see this stuff. So it's in these relationships that actually help us come to this realization. And even after the relationship, it tests that realization. And it helps you live that realization. Because even at the start of the journey, where it feels like, oh, this relationship, it's kind of, she's getting on my nerves, or he's getting on my nerves, or I can't really take him or her too much more. I really can't deal with my parents. I'm going to move out. There is the feeling that this is just too much. And I'm going to make myself a little bit more comfortable over here, away from them. Let me just run from this challenge. But it's coming face to face with this challenge that creates the most transformation. And the realization is not the end point. Really, there's no end point. So there's actually spiritual bypassing for many, even after the realization. I've realized that I'm free, but I can't stand my wife or my kids or my girlfriend or boyfriend or my husband. And you see, it's not living that realization. It's one thing to have the realization. It's another thing to be living that realization. It's this embodiment of that realization. So you see that there's often a lot of this spiritual bypassing even after a glimpse. And in fact, it's very common because that glimpse, the stuff that you thought you were done with, seems to resurface. It only felt like you overcame those difficult emotions because you came over them by pushing them down. So there's a suppressing of those emotions, and that's why they seem to resurface. So there's this pendulum experience that there's this like a high, the bliss, the happiness, the freedom, the peace, the love, and then swings back, or it feels like you plunge back down into the depths of hell of your relationship. Experience love. Well, now it's time to live as that love in your relationship. Experience the oneness of everything. Everything is whole, unconditional acceptance. And here I am after the realization, 2 weeks after, rejecting my partner because all the shit that they do annoys me. You see how comical it is. And this is very prevalent in the spiritual scene, in these spiritual circles. It's far too easy to have a realization of the absolute. And then after that, let's abandon the character, abandon the human experience, nobody here, nothing to do. And I would just rather just bliss out in my room with my eyes closed and lock the door and forget about the family. This is bypassing. This is not a complete realization. This is not living the realization. It's like bypassing the human experience. It's rejecting the human experience. It's a grasping of the realization of the absolute, but then there's aversion to this experience. And this experience is a relative experience. And this relative experience is made of relationships. And that absolute realization should have showed you that all there is you. So it's a relationship with yourself. So you see the irony in trying to avoid yourself. It can't be done. So it's very common for this bypassing to happen at the start of the journey, when things start to feel like there's a lot of friction. And this friction is really this almost this rubbing, right? It's creating this friction, rubbing, and it almost feels like it's like starting a fire. And this is kind of what ignites that spark. And then there's a longing for truth. This can't be it. I got in this relationship, got married, I was promised happily ever after. This is not happily ever after. This is forever in hell. I want out. So coming to this point, it helps you come to that realization. This can't be it. There must be something more. What's beyond this? So it helps one arrive at the realization. And then there's the realization, or there could be many realizations, and it's then about applying that, sort of say. That's where the rubber meets the road, is in the relationships. It's in this human experience. There's one thing to realize truth, and another thing to be living truth. There can be realization without transformation. But there can't be transformation without relationships. It's these relationships that really transform the human experience via embodying that truth that was realized. And that's where you're a gift to yourself and a gift to your partner. You're a gift. Self-realization is a gift to yourself, and it's a gift to the world. To have a realization and then deny the human experience and run away from your family, or lock the door and sit all day with your eyes closed because that's the only way to experience your true nature, it's bypassing. It's avoiding. It's not living totally. To realize the totality of life that you are, nothing is excluded. If something was excluded, then it wouldn't be totality. In totality, everything is included. And this is the fullness of life. There's no separation. Creating a separation between absolute and relative, creating a separation between formless and form. I love the formless, but the form. Well, the form is all about relationships. Relationships only happen in form. And that's what this experience is all about. So the mind can't grasp this because it only knows this or that. It can't understand the paradox. And the complete realization is a paradox. It's living the paradox. Hopefully this helps. See you in the next one.